Good evening everyone. My name is Orzuma and I am going to speak to you today on behalf of Jambori. Before even going to the admissions criteria, I just like to briefly talk about some of the advantages of the US education system that's not very commonly known. All of you know that there are obvious there are some obvious reasons for people to go to the US for doing their masters or PhD, but there are some other things also, other smaller things that are smaller means not as well known facts as the other facts, so you should know those as well. Those might actually help you take some decisions. First is course options, right? So it's an in the US, unlike India, in India even if you are studying in an IIT kind of college, it has IITs offer only engineering related degrees. You will not be able to do a bachelor's degree in management or psychology or something from an IIT. So the Indian education system is built in such a way that we have got very specialized colleges for specialized degrees. We don't have universities where you can do all the possible degrees. Whereas in the US, there are almost every university offers almost all the available degrees, right? So what that means is that you have a lot of course options. You can take if let's say you want to go for your masters in mechanical engineering. So in addition to master courses related to mechanical engineering, if you want, you can supplement your degree by taking courses in management, finance, etc. What that does is that makes your CV very strong and makes you more employable. So that's one huge advantage of the US education system. You can supplement your core degree with courses from other fields. There's a lot of flexibility. So now all of you have done your bachelor's degree. So those of you who have done your bachelor's degree in engineering, so the degrees are for 4 years in India, right? So if it's 4 years, then it's 4 years. Even if you are an extremely brilliant student, it's not that you can finish the degree in 3 years. 4 years means everybody gets 4 years to complete that degree. Let's say you are a little weaker in your studies, or you have a lot of extracurricular activities, so you want to finish the 4-year degree in 5 years without failing or something, because that is not possible. So basically the duration flexibility is not there at all in India. So even now if you want to do a master's degree in India, a master's degree is for 2 years. It's for everyone. Even if you are an extremely bright student who can study more or take up more subjects, even then you don't have the option of finishing it sooner than the stipulated time. However, in the US you can do that. For instance, the master's degrees are supposed to be for 2 years, but if you take more courses or higher difficulty level courses, you may be able to finish your master's degree in less than 2 years. A lot of Indian students do that. They finish their required courses in about 1.5 years. Then the rest of the time, they prefer to do an internship or something, so that their employability increases. Again, the more internships that you do, you are increasing your chances of getting a job. So the course flexibility is there. Flexibility in terms of duration. This is not something that is well known. Now this is specifically for master students, not for PhD. So when you do a PhD, you have to do a dissertation. So there's no option, of course. Your PhD dissertation is the main thing. But unlike India, in India, if you do a PhD degree, most of it goes into your dissertation. There are not many courses that actually a lot of universities don't even require you to take courses. But in the US, you have to take a certain number of subjects, plus you have to do the dissertation. Now at the master's level, in most US universities, you will get two types of master's degree. One is called thesis master's degree, one is called the non-thesis master's degree, right? Now you will be tempted to take the non-thesis degree, because that means you don't have to do a thesis as a part of your master's degree. So it might be a little tempting. Actually during the application you might even be asked, do you want to go for the thesis masters or the non-thesis masters? So you may be tempted to not do the thesis because it is hard, it is a lot of research involved, etc. However, if you want to do a PhD in future, it's extremely pretty highly recommended that you do a thesis along with your masters, right? The master's degree that you do should be a thesis master's degree. Moreover, while hiring, when companies hire master's degree students, they give preference to students who have the thesis option. Moreover, thesis students who have the thesis option, they are able to get jobs in different types of industry, whereas the non-thesis people, they don't get jobs in the research R&D departments or the consulting departments, etc., right? So wherever possible, if you are asked to choose between the thesis option in masters or the non-thesis option, you should always go for the thesis option, right? Okay, so now while I was talking about the flexibility, so there are like lots of other types of flexibility as well, right? For instance, just because your bachelor's degree is in electrical engineering does not mean that your master's degree should also be in electrical engineering. You can switch, you can switch your major. You can do a master's degree now in a indirectly related field. You need not do it in exactly the same field in which you have done your bachelor's degree. Moreover, let me ask you this question, right? Let's say that for your bachelor's degree you are going to an engineering college, a private engineering college, probably not very good. You will get admission there. Now, if you do extremely well in your first semester, extremely well in your first year, can you take a transfer to a better, probably can you take a transfer to an IIT or an NIT? Is my question clear? So of course no, right? So if you if you get an admission for your bachelor's degree in a certain college, certain university, then no matter how well you do there is no option to take a transfer to a better university, right? But the US education system, it's possible, So let's say that right now your academics are not that good, or your GRE score does not come up to be very good, and you are not able to get admission in a very top university. So that's fine, if you do extremely well in your first semester or first year, you can take a transfer to a higher university, to a better university. So it's like a second chance, just because you don't get into a good college, in the first go, does not mean that you can never go to a good college, right? You just have to keep doing well. You can apply as a transfer student, to universities after your first semester or after your first year. Now, the reason why I am telling you this is that very often students say that okay, I want to go to the top 20 universities, but the Indian education system is built in such a way that their profile is just not strong enough to go to the top 20 universities, irrespective of what GRE score they get, right? But once you know that okay, you go to the best possible university, with your profile, do extremely well there, and after first semester or after second semester, you have now another shot. You can apply and try, as a transfer student in your dream university. So that is a possibility there, right? So don't drop your plans just because you don't get an admission offer from your dream university. So this is the thing that you need to keep in mind when you apply, right? And anybody any questions? Anybody any questions till now? These are some, I would rather say, these are some lesser known facts about the US education system. The big ones everybody knows anyway. These are some of the lesser known facts about the US education system. Any questions? Yes, Bhumika, your question is the transfer option does that depend on your performance? Yes, it depends solely on your first semester and second semester performance. And then when you apply as a transfer student to a university, then doesn't matter what your bachelor's degree was, doesn't matter what your GRE score was. The transfer decision is made solely on your performance in the first semester or first two semesters. In PhD, this transfer is not possible, purely because in PhDs, PhDs are like, you get 100% scholarship. So the university is paying you to, literally paying you to do your PhD degree there. So the transfer option is not there for PhD. The transfer option is there for masters, right? For PhD, right from your first semester, you'll be starting your work on dissertation. So even if you decide to change a university, so whichever new university you go to, you'll have to start from scratch. So you'll end up kind of losing time. So Jayavardhan, I didn't understand your question, so you might want to rephrase it. Okay, moving on. Now, as I said, that there are a lot of programs that you can shift to. It happens. I counsel a lot of students every year, and I get students who are currently studying electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, but they just took that subject right after class 12. They had no clue what it meant or what kind of work is involved, and in their third year or in their second year, they realize that they don't want a career in that they don't even want to do that, right? So there are a lot of Indian students who face this dilemma, that they take up programs such as instrumentation engineering or production engineering or electronics engineering without even knowing what exactly it is. Very often they find out that they are either not good at that program or they're not interested in it. So now for the master's levels in India, if you have to go do a master's degree or bachelor's degree, has to be of the same course, same subject, right? But in the US, it's not necessary. You can switch to other programs. So these are some of the programs for which you can be of any bachelor's degree level, right? You need not have done a bachelor's degree related to this. As long as you have an engineering or science related bachelor's degree, you can apply for these programs. These are niche programs, very highly employable, in-demand programs. Excuse me. Right, so as I was telling you, these are some of the programs for which there are probably no relevant bachelor's degrees, right? So masters in computational finance is offered in top universities such as Carnegie Mellon, Purdue, etc. You can be from any engineering or master or any science related bachelor's degree program. You can apply for this. Same with financial engineering, engineering management. Now engineering management, for this you have to be from an engineering background. So any kind of engineering degree if you have, you can apply for this. MIS, it helps if you are from an electrical or computer science background or software engineering background. Business analytics, again, you can be from any science or engineering related background. You can apply. So this is actually a pretty in-demand program. It's kind of new. It has kind of ballooned literally in the last 3-4 years. Pretty in-demand program. MS in integrated marketing communications, again it's now not engineering, it's more management related or marketing related, right? So MS game design, development, programming, etc. So here this of course, for this you need to have a programming background. If it's not, the programming background is not in your bachelor's degree, that's fine. Even if you have certifications or other online courses related to programming, that's fine. MS operations research, again anybody with an engineering or science related background degree can pursue this program. So what I'm trying to say, that if you are one of those students who don't want to continue or don't want to study, don't want to do anything related to the bachelor's degree that you are pursuing, so this is an option now. You can have a master's degree, but it need not be in the same field in which you have done your bachelor's degree from, right? If you want, feel free to click a picture of the screen. If you want to, you can do that. I'll pause for a couple of seconds so that you can take a picture of the screen if you want to. Okay. And this is just a very short list. There are a lot of other programs as well. These are some of the more popular ones, but there's a lot of other programs as well, such as masters in supply chain management, masters in real estate. So there are a lot of other types of programs as well, not so well known, and but really highly employable. Now, the one advantage of applying to programs that are not very well known among the Indian community is that your chances of getting admission increases. For example, the integrated marketing communication program. So not many Indians actually know about this program, right? And now Northwestern is a top 10 university, right? So even in Northwestern, because the competition is so less, from Indian students, so people with not so great profiles or average GRE scores end up getting admission, right? So that is one advantage of applying to these niche programs. The competition is not that stiff purely because most people don't know about these programs, right? So just be on the lookout for these type of programs. We have an entire list, of course, but these are the ones that most Indian students go for. Okay, before I go to the next segment, I have a question from Vikas Anand saying, will my research work done in last year of engineering post applying for... Okay, so except for transfer, I'm not able to understand your question. Will my research work done in the last year of engineering post applying for an university acceptance count for? No, I mean, if you see whatever you've done in your bachelor's degree, that will be taken into account when you apply for master's degree. Once you enter a university for a master's program, and after a semester, if you are applying for a transfer to another university for the master's program, then whatever you have done in your bachelor's degree, that it does not carry as much weightage. Does that answer your question? I hope I understood your question properly, no? So Kamaljeet and Jayavardhan, hold on to your questions because I will be speaking more about the admissions criteria. Right now I have not even actually started speaking about the admissions criteria, right? I have just given you some basics about the US education system. I talked about some lesser known facts about the US education system. So just hold on to your questions. Now we will be talking about the admissions criteria. So this is a list of the admissions criteria actually, and in no particular order, right? So just because the GRE is on top does not mean that GRE is given the maximum weightage. It is just a random list. It is not in any particular order, right? So of course one of the most important criteria, the GRE score, right? So now the GRE, universities do not have cutoffs or anything, right? Most universities do not have cutoffs. But if you are applying for engineering and science programs, then in your maths section, for the maths section, you are expected to get at least a 158, right? So if you have 160 plus, then it's good. But a minimum of 158 is expected, from students applying for engineering and science related programs in the top 50 universities, right? So keep that in mind. For verbal, they don't have any such expectations or any such criteria. Now, in the same university, let's say Purdue University, so it does not mean that everybody would require the same GRE score to get admission in Purdue. Depending on what program you are applying for, the GRE expectation would increase. In the US, most Indian applications for master's programs are for the computer science degree. So in any university, again, let's go to the example of Purdue. In Purdue, if you need a 325 to get admission for masters in computer science, for masters in electrical, probably you will get admission of the 322. For electrical engineering, for mechanical engineering, probably you will get admission of the 319, 320, just like that. So the GRE score expectation even within the same university differs from program to program. It depends on what program you are applying for. For Indian students, computer science is the most competitive. So if you and your friend applying to the same university, but you are applying for computer science and your friend is applying for something else, then you would need a higher GRE score than your friend to get admission, right? So keep that in mind. So there is no average data available. So you will rarely find any university website saying that the average GRE score required is this, that, because there is no concept of average. It differs from program to program, right? Now this is TOEFL and IELTS. Both of these are same. They are like English language tests. Indian passport holders are considered to be non-native English speakers, right? So if you are an Indian passport holder, you would need to take a language test, a TOEFL or an IELTS, right? Now the TOEFL or IELTS, the scores are mainly treated as cutoff. So in most universities, to be able to get admission, you would need an 80 in your TOEFL, and to get scholarship, they would require 100 in your TOEFL, right? So now what it means is that whether you get an 85 or 100 or 120 does not matter. You just have to clear the cutoff of 80. So if you get a cutoff of 80, so you are eligible to get admission. But if you get a 110 or 120, it's not that you will be given preference over somebody who has an 81 or 82. So TOEFL scores are merely cutoffs that you have to cross. After you meet the cutoff, it does not matter how much higher score you get, right? So that's it. The academic record. Universities consider the GRE score and the academic record as a single component. So if you both of these together, they give an indication to the university about whether you will be able to cope with their master's or PhD program or not. So if both your GRE scores and your academic records great, then it's excellent, but if your academic record is not as good as you want it to be, you can always make up for it by getting a high GRE score. Moreover, the GRE score is something that will be more recent. Also, GRE, you can take multiple times. If you don't get a score in the first attempt, you can always take it a second time. So that's the advantage of the GRE exam. Now, academic record, they don't care about your class 9, 10, 11, 12 exams, right? Only bachelor's and beyond that. So that means if your percentage in your bachelor's degree, so if you apply in your final year, then whatever grades you have till your previous semester, so that is counted. In addition to bachelor's degree, if you have anything else, any kind of certifications or any kind of diplomas, all of that are counted as academic record, okay? So or if you have a master's degree, anything, all of that is counted as academic record. Now see, within India itself, you might have seen that some universities give percentage grades, some universities give GPA out of 10, some universities give GPA out of 4. So it is impossible to compare it's impossible to compare different grades. So if somebody has a 60% from Pune University, for instance, it is not exactly equivalent to 60% from any other university in the world, right? So the raw numbers, or whatever the grades and marks that you have, the raw numbers don't mean anything, okay? Universities always like to see the quality of your college, that means the quality of the bachelor's degree that you are attending, not the university, right? In India, we have this concept where there are different types of colleges within one same university. So not that. So only the college, the quality of college that you are going to for your bachelor's degree, that carries a lot of weightage. Also your rank in class. Let's say that for some reason after class 12 you were not able to get admission in a good college. It happens. So but even after getting into an average college, if you are in the top 5% of your class, or top 1% of your class, so you get points for that. So these two things are actually given more weightage than the absolute number or absolute percentage of your grades, right? So if the college that you go to is good, if your rank, your performance in class is good, then you can rest assured that your academic record will be considered to be good. So any questions till now on the first 2 points? Okay, Pulkit, your question is for scholarship purpose, how much GRE score? So there is nothing like that, there is no cutoff for GRE score. TOEFL I mentioned because TOEFL is treated as a cutoff, right? GRE there are no such thing, and it will vary from university to university as well. In some university you might be able to get full scholarship with 320. In some university you may not even get admission with 320. So it's very it's a very difficult question to answer. Ankush, your question is which country to opt for MIS course? Yeah, Canada or US. Okay, so it depends on what college that you have got into. In Canada also there are good colleges, like you have got McGill, York, British Columbia, University of Toronto. So if your objective should be to go to a good college, right? So in terms of jobs and all, if you go to US universities located in the California region or New York, New Jersey, Texas region, so these regions there are lots of jobs for for MIS. So either you can do that, or if you can get admission in the top 3-4 Canadian colleges, then you should go there. So it all boils down to which college you have got admission in rather than which country you should be going to. Ankit, your question is it useful to give GRE subject tests like maths? Okay, totally depends on what program you are applying for. If you want to apply for a PhD program in maths, and it's mandatory for you to take the GRE subject test in maths. But if you are applying for a master's degree in computer science, then you will be just wasting your time taking subject tests. Even if you have subject test scores, you are not going to get extra weightage for them. Bhavishya, your question is to get admission in a decent university, what should be the score in bachelor's? I think I just addressed that question, that there is no good or bad score. More than your absolute score, your performance in your class. Where do you stand in comparison to your peer group in your class? That is more important. So same, Kamalji, you are also asking the same question, that you have a 65%. Now see, with US, the advantage is that the percentage does not matter. They are looking for some other stuff. Now, with a 65%, you cannot get admission in countries like Germany, UK, etc., or even Canada for PhD, right? Because they look at academics very strongly. But in the US, there is this whole bunch of criteria. So even if you're 65 by itself does not mean anything. 65 from which college? If you have got 65, the topper in your department, the top guy in your department, what is his score? So all these things are more important, right, than just simply saying 65%, right? So Alekhya, your question is, can I know some good universities in Texas? I suggest that just you check out this website. Let me type it out. It's www.usnews.com. You'll get the rankings of the US universities, so that will give you a good idea, right? You can, from that list, you can pick up the colleges that's in Texas. Bhumika, your question is, even if I'm in top 5% in my class, how do the US university verify that? There is no variable to verify that. Okay, so in your online application form, you will have to fill out all this information, and they will do an audit. Your recommender also has to corroborate whatever you are saying. Of course, they don't require to submit a certificate, but you will be required in the application to write all this stuff, and you have to vouch that the information provided is correct. So that's a big thing. Okay, now coming to work experience. So 99% of the MS and PhD programs do not require you to have work experience, but there are certain programs like such as MS in business analytics, or in some universities where if you want to do your masters in finance, etc., or masters in management, so they may require work experience. But for all science and engineering related programs, you don't need to have any work experience. So even if you have some work experience, you need to present that work experience as as research, right? So if you, let's say you are a mechanical engineer and you have worked for 2 years in Infosys doing some coding, and now you want to apply for masters in mechanical engineering, then those 2 years is totally waste. You are not going to get any extra weightage for that, right? So even if you have work experience, it will have some weightage only if it is related to whatever you are applying for. Next, extracurricular activities. Now there is this common myth that the extracurricular activity is very important. I keep hearing students who come for counseling, they say, oh, I don't have any extracurricular activities, will I get admission in a good college, etc., etc. Now this is a complete myth. For masters and PhD programs, extracurricular activity is not important. So masters and PhD degrees are academic degrees. What's important is your academic record, GRE scores, your research work, so that's important. Extracurricular activities, even if you do not have any extracurricular activities at all, it's perfectly fine. So don't waste your time trying to focus on extracurricular activities. Moreover, even if you have excellent extracurricular activities, like the best possible extracurricular activities, but you do not have a good academic record, you do not have a good GRE score, you will not get admission, right? So excellent extracurricular activities will not be a substitute for good GRE scores and academic record, right? So extracurricular activity is not important for your master's and PhD degree, right? Right. So any questions till now? Alekhya has a question. What about the combination of GRE plus IELTS? So I think I already said that you can take either GRE or either TOEFL or IELTS. That's fine. But not all US universities accept IELTS. So go to the website ielts.org. It has a list of US universities which accepts IELTS, right? About 50% of the US universities accept IELTS, right? Not all the US universities accept IELTS. So be careful about what college you are planning to go to. It should accept IELTS at least. Joita has a question that is there any social work experience required for masters? No. So all of that comes under extracurricular activities. As I said, I repeat, even if you have zero extracurricular activities, it's perfectly fine. No harm. So Vikas, your question is, could you provide websites, blogs? Okay. So as I said, the usnews.com, that is an authentic site. Universities themselves, they give accreditation, to the US News website. So you can get information about universities, etc., from that website. Otherwise, I would not trust anything else. You should always go for official stuff. Kamalji, your question is, do all universities accept TOEFL? Yes, all universities in the US accept TOEFL. Actually, all universities across the world accept TOEFL. Right. Now, coming to, let me first do research work, then I'll do the other point, right? So now research work is extremely important. This is probably the most significant component, in an application, whether it's for masters or PhD, right? So if you have excellent research work, then I have seen people even get into colleges such as Berkeley, MIT with average academic record and low GRE scores, right? So what's most significant, in this entire list, what's most significant is the research work. In fact, about 5-6 years ago, we had a student, he had just about around 64% in his bachelor's degree and very average GRE score. He got into MIT, So the reason is that he had 3 international publications and a patent, right? So that's how significant the research work component is. If your research work is strong, then everything else becomes secondary, right? So you have time now, right? So those of you who who are thinking of applying for 2018 or later, you should start working on the research work component of your application. While giving scholarships, scholarship decisions are, while assessing applicants for scholarship, the first thing that they look at is the research component. For PhD, in fact, the research component has, the maximum weightage, maximum weightage, right? So now research work, what counts as research work, right? So research, all engineering students do a project as a part of final year anyway, so that is research. In addition to that, if you have any papers that you have published or any papers that you have presented, even at your department level or college level, that also, all of that also counts. As a part of your bachelor's degree, if you have done any internship or if you have done any industrial training, etc., so you can present that information also as research work, right? Even if you have published articles in IEEE or even in your college magazine and all, so all of that counts, right? If it helps, of course, it helps a lot if you have published in national or international journals. If you are able to do that, then it's extremely beneficial and extremely beneficial. But less than 1% students are able to do that. Okay. So those of you who are especially the PhD candidates, the one way to make your profile stronger is to try to get some publications, right? Try to get some stuff published. So Joyita, your question is it necessary to have paper published? Okay, it's not necessary for the paper to come out. Even if you have submitted an abstract to some journal, you can say that abstract submitted to this journal for this, or that, or paper request for paper, accepted, so you can have those statements as well. Sometimes the publication process takes a long time, so that's understood, right? Any questions on the research work segment? It's extremely important, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Animesh, your question is, you have 2 national publications and 1 seminar presentation. Is it good for PhD? Well, it's good. It's good. Kamalji, it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory, of course. But it will improve your chances of admission and scholarship a lot. But it's not mandatory. It is not mandatory. Hemant, in Germany is a whole different ball game. In Germany, most universities have a cutoff of 70 or 75%. So in your bachelor's degree, you have to get at least a 70% in your bachelor's degree. Some German universities want you to get a 75% also. So that is the first step in German universities. Then they are going to look at the rest of the profile. But thesis is fine, Kamalji. Thesis would work. So Joyita, I think I already addressed these questions. Paper presentation also counts, poster presentation also counts. I already mentioned that. Garima, your question is, where can I get to start for research? Okay, your college professors, usually they are the first people to talk to. In a lot of colleges, at least in the good colleges, professors do a lot of research anyway, so you can help them. Probably you can offer to help them or have a discussion with your HOD. They are the better people to guide you about how to start research, where to start research, etc., or what to start research on. So Sanjana, your question is, will the topic of our final year project count? No, the topic will not count, right? Only topic will not help. You have to write the topic and then you have to kind of, write a 2-3 sentence summary about how you plan to, do the project, right? That has to be there. Just writing the name is not enough. So because your question is, I'm a part of an F1 electric car making team from my college, and I have participated in 2 international events. Yeah, all these count. These sound good, so they should definitely add to your profile. See, Hemant, having research work always helps, but in the European universities, and even first of all, you will hardly find any Japanese universities which give which Russian and Japanese universities, actually you will just barely find 1 or 2 universities which teach the degree in English, right? Russian and Japanese universities teach the degrees in their language. In Russia in Russian, and in Japan in Japanese. So you will be hard pressed to find any decent universities, in these 2 countries. So Kamaljeet, your question is, can I get PhD in topic other than thesis I have done? Oh yeah, of course, absolutely, you can do that. Of course, they have to be in a related topic. If your current degree and thesis is in biology or something related to biology, so if you want to apply for PhD in maths, now that will be difficult, obviously. So it's something related, yes. So let's say your thesis and current thing is in botany, but now you want to do cellular biology, so that is possible. In related subjects, it's possible. So Garima, your question is what they are suggesting to read the topic from internet, but nothing after that. So in that case, you can think of doing a literature review, right? So that is also type of research paper where you are not doing any experiment and stuff, but you are kind of reading different types of articles or related articles on the internet and doing a short literature review. That means collating all the information available into a paper. So that is also type of paper. So you can try to write that kind of a paper as well. Okay. Any other questions related to research work? Yeah, Jagdar, it's possible. If you have done your bachelor's in mechanical, you want to do your MS in structure, no problem. So those of you who have a teaching experience, if you are teacher, so that also helps, that also adds value to your profile. Yes, Bhumika, literature review can be published, of course. Okay, alright, now moving on, the next part, the personal documents, that is more a factor of the application, of the actual university application. So when you apply to universities, you will be required to write 2 things. One is called SOP, and that is statement of purpose, and the other is called LOR, letter of recommendation. So you will be required to submit 3 letters of recommendation, and you have to write 1 or 2 statements of purpose. So that's the personal document, right, which is university specific and is a part of the actual application process. Now the SOP, the statement of purpose is extremely important. You have to make sure that, see, you can have a great profile, but if you don't know how to present it, if you're not able to present it in an impressive manner, you will not get admission. So the statement of purpose plays that role. It gives you a platform to talk about your achievements, to present your profile, right? So you have to, it always helps to have a skeleton SOP or a template of an SOP or a rough draft of SOP, something that you should you should start thinking of early on. If you try to do the SOP like 1 week before the deadline, not a good idea, not a good idea at all. And for letters of recommendation, as I said, you need 3. Try to get them from your project guides so that they can tell that you are good at research or etc. etc. So try to get them from project guides or people under whom you have done projects, or if there is one particular subject in which you want to specialize, so maybe the professor who taught that subject, you can think of taking an LOR from that person. And but whichever professor you are taking a letter of recommendation from, you need to make sure that you have got good grades in his subjects, okay, that you have got good marks in his subjects. Any questions? Sanjana, your question is when should we start working on our SOPs? The online applications will start becoming available from August. So if you have your SOPs, LORs, your CV, everything ready, then you can, if you are ready with your GRE as well, you can if you can try to send out your application by end of August. If you are able to do that, then you are actually, that's a huge advantage. For masters, admissions are giving on a first come first serve basis. So what that means is that the sooner you apply, the higher or the better are your chances of getting admission and scholarship. So to save yourself time, you should actually work on your application side by side with your GRE preparation. Don't keep it towards the end, right? It's not that, okay, let me first get a GRE score, then I will think of universities. No, it does not work like that. The SOP, yes, it is university specific, but having one generic SOP ready is always a good idea. Then after your GRE score, you just have to modify it a bit. You don't have to write it from scratch. Okay, so and as I said, SOP is an extremely important document. That is the place where you will be able to tell the admission committee about your achievements and about your profile. So it's extremely important. You may sometimes students end up doing 20-25 versions of an SOP, and then the final version looks perfect. So just spend time on your SOP. An SOP is not something that you should be like wrapping up, in a 1 day or 2 days. Okay. So Bhavishya has another question. If one is working, can their leads or managers write LOR? Yes, but not all. See, if you have work experience or that, or if you are currently working, then of the 3 LORs, not more than 1 should be from your workplace. Remember, masters and PhD degrees are, they are academic degrees, right? So you should try to get at least 2 from your, college. And 1 you can take from your supervisor or your manager or whatever. Any questions? Any more questions? Alekia, I already said that any kind of additional academic certifications that you might have, they always add to the profile. Maybe let's say some Java programming certification or some Microsoft software engineering certification, anything, or Six Sigma certification. Any kind of additional certifications always help. Alekia, I didn't get your question. What's BTech about? So anybody has any questions? So I am done with whatever information I had to give. So these are some resources. Again, you can click a picture of the screen if you want to. On the Jamboree India website, we have a collated list of deadlines for different programs. The deadlines will of course be updated only in the middle of July, but you can bookmark this link. You'll get the ready-made list of universities and their deadlines, so you don't have to go to different university websites to find the application deadlines. Okay, so that's all for today.